In the year 2014, during the build-up to the 2015 general elections, Bola Tinubu declared that Nigeria was challenged. This assertion was true then and remains true today. In the last 24 months that Bola Tinubu has been president, the Naira has lost its strength, its value crumbling by over 130% in just 2 years. He has just passed a budget of over 54 trillion naira, with a proposed fiscal deficit of almost 14 trillion, representing nearly a quarter of the budget. A large portion of this budget would also go towards servicing debts. This vicious cycle of borrowing to pay back previous loans, while essential services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure remain starved of adequate funding. Bound by years of short-sighted policies and reckless borrowing, this country, widely described as the giant of Africa and blessed with vast natural resources, abundant talent, and an undying spirit, has been challenged. Despite its immense promise and potential, it is burdened by social turbulence, economic woes, and a mountain of death. The signs of decline have been evident for many decades. The depressed look and anger of the people on the street reflect the collective frustration experienced as prices soared beyond the reach of the common man. While these challenges have been a recurring decima for several decades, the seeds had been planted long before. Please join me as we explore how all of this came to be. The reality is that every economic ideology has its strengths and weaknesses. And this is what has played out in Nigeria with the issues of subsidies and handouts given to subnationals. For several decades, Nigeria has built its economy on a fragile foundation. While Nigeria claims to operate a mixed economy, it is largely socialist in ideology. This means that the government is expected to play a bigger role in managing the economy. Perhaps due to its colonial history, it made sense at the time of independence to tow a different path than the one traveled by its colonial masters. Today, Nigeria's realities are different, and the global economy has evolved. Ordinarily, subsidies are meant to help the people instead of draining the nation's resources. But in Nigeria's case, trillions of naira were being lost in a bid to keep petrol, electricity, and even the naira artificially cheap, while the corruption flourished in the shadows. Instead of producing wealth, the Nigerian elite had mastered the art of rent-seeking rather than create industries. The elite thrived on a system of rent-seeking, a situation where power and influence were more profitable than innovation, industry, and enterprise. For example, according to Business Day Nigeria, the government lost about 13.2 trillion naira over 3 years between 2021 and 2023, maintaining an artificial rate. The government also lost over 40 trillion naira, that's $30 billion, for about 18 years since the early 2000s for the sake of subsidizing petrol, according to PwC, and a subsequent 6 trillion naira to electric subsidies between 2014 and 2024. Beyond the burden these subsidies put on Nigeria, the resultant market distortions led to inefficiencies and a lack of growth and investment in these sectors, thereby worsening the situation. Subsidies also increased corruption in the system, resulting in poorer services and a generally displaced populace. As consumption subsidies became the order of the day, the ugly reality of where the country was headed stared everyone in the face, and the need to win the country off this unproductive feeding bottle became increasingly there. The national conversation gradually shifted from passionate debate about progress to survival. Unemployment surged, industry collapsed, and hope became a luxury. Decades ago, a Nigerian president famously said, "The problem is not money, but how to spend it." At this time, Nigeria had its chance. In the 1970s, oil wealth flowed like a mighty river, filling government coffers with endless riches. But instead of investing in the future, the leaders squandered it, indulging in reckless spending, while nations like South Korea and Taiwan embraced industrialization and technology. Nigeria remained complacent. In the 1980s, while the world integrated into a new global economy, Nigeria took the same loans some other Asian countries took, but failed to reform as the Asian counterparts did. In the 1990s, while the internet revolutionized the world, Nigeria, under military rule, was frozen off the opportunities of globalization as he had to contend with a negative international reputation and immense political and social turbulence internally. The 2000 brought some hope with Nigeria's return to democracy and the Jubilee 2000 debt relief. The Jubilee 2000 was a global campaign for cancelling more than $100 billion of debt owed by the 35 poorest countries. Unfortunately, corruption quickly took hold, siphoning away the gains. By the 2010s, instability, insecurity, and economic stagnation are taking root, leaving the nation vulnerable to every global crisis that followed. Now, over the years, imagine economies like the Asian tigers and some other oil-producing nations like Norway, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar have taken advantage of unique events such as wars, new technology, and the expansion of the petrochemical industry, globalization and trade, liberalization, technological advancement, the emergence of regional trade blocs, and immense digital transformation. Economic realities arising from geopolitical shifts and events have driven growth and yielded immense wealth and development for so many countries that were able to take advantage of these opportunities and have shaped their economic trajectories. Dutch disease is simply a situation where a country experiences a large influx of foreign currency for a period due to its over-reliance on a single resource, making the economy vulnerable to price fluctuations in the global market. This happens because the initial influx of the foreign currency leads to an artificial appreciation of the country's currency, which then incentivizes import by making import cheaper and export more expensive to compete in the global market, which leads to a rapid decline of other productive sectors like manufacturing and agriculture, which later causes income inequality and ultimately poverty because the resource boom typically only benefits a far smaller segment of the population. Nigeria's overdependence on oil became one of its greatest weaknesses. When oil prices were high, the country prospered, but when prices fell, the economy collapsed. Other oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia and the UAE used their wealth to diversify, investing in industries, infrastructure, and technology. Nigeria, however, spent recklessly and saved little. Corruption in the oil sector, massive theft, and mismanagement meant the nation struggled even in times of abundance. Despite being an OPEC member, Nigeria has often failed to meet its production quotas due to internal disruptions, including oil theft and mismanagement. According to many, the Nigerian state-owned NNPC has been a huge burden and a bleeding point for the country. It has run losses and deficit for years, while costing the country huge expenses in turnaround maintenance and personnel costs. It has failed to help the country build buffers, such as contingency funds and sovereign wealth fund portfolios. It has also failed to evolve into a stronger and a globally competitive conglomerate. On the contrary, because of its oil wealth mismanagement and the NNPC, Nigeria has depleted its reserves, accumulated more debt, compounded its economic woes, and sunk further into poverty. Perhaps the most painful truth was that Nigeria was not doomed by fate, but by leadership struggles. Time and again, leaders have chosen short-term convenience over long-term stability. Fearful of public backlash, they avoided tough decisions, allowing debt, subsidies, and inefficiencies to fester. Even well-intentioned leaders found themselves trapped by a system resistant to change. It was not just corruption or an absence of patriotism, but lack of vision and a failure to see beyond the present crisis. Nigerian leaders often articulate solutions to national challenges but fail to implement meaningful change. This phenomenon can be attributed to bounded rationality, a situation in which decision makers operate under limited information and capacity constraints, cognitive biases, and short-term political interest. The lack of capacity shown in the ineffective management of various subsidy regimes is a typical example of their bounded rationality in the management of the Nigerian economy that has resulted in a situation where the country's debt service to revenue ratio rose to over 100% at some point in 2023, rather than the World Bank recommended ratio of 22.5%. For a country that likes to pride itself as the giant of Africa and the hope of the black man, its leader must not evade responsibilities. They must embrace the dilemma that comes with political leadership and take the hard decision that will position the country for long-term sustainability. As the year 2025 unfolds, Nigeria stands at a crossroad. Will Nigeria finally wake up, or will it continue zombie walking into further decline? Only time will tell.